Welcome to The Journey. I'm your host, Connie Salika. This is part 2 of our journey with Julieann. Julieann Hartman, the spotlight is on you, and I have been enjoying this so much, getting to know you and the history behind who you are today. And where we left off was your mom had divorced your dad. You guys were safe, the 3 girls, and your mom was taking care of that, and she is now remarrying.
Yes. Isn't this fun though, you guys? I'm so excited that we're doing this because it's amazing to see. I mean, even when I'm talking about this story, sometimes I'm like, wait, who was that girl? It was somebody else because I don't live there anymore.
Yes. Well,
you know?
when we were doing part 1, I was sitting here listening and thinking, okay, so who has the rights to this movie? And can I play you, Julieann?
Yes.
Who was that? The crew.
The crew is laughing. We have a little bit of a studio audience out there. So my mom now marries my stepdad, and he was a great man. I mean, my gosh, he was, my sister was going to be graduating, I think, 8th grade, going into high school, and she didn't have an outfit, and so my mom was getting into his truck one day, and she looks down and she sees a $100 bill, and she was like, oh my gosh, someone dropped a $100 bill. And it was actually him that did that, so that because he didn't want to make her feel like, hey, I'm going to give you money to, buy your daughter some clothes. But that's his generosity. He was really sweet, really kind. But he, was very rough around the edges because he had never, let me say this.
So where were you living when she married him?
Okay.
You moved from this one room, a studio
Yes.
apartment that the 4 women were living in? Then when she...
Yes, he took us now to San Diego. I'm so glad that you brought that up because I just start running on the story, and you're the one that's keeping me, accountable to the timeline.
San Diego.
We're down in San Diego, and remember now we have bleached out our birth
Names.
certificates. So now I am Julieann Cabral. And so now we're getting to school. The only problem was when we went to go get our driver's license, we got caught. But we could talk about that later, because they knew that we had to bring a birth certificate, and you can't bleach your birth certificate. So anyway, we had to change that. We had to fix it all. But so we go down to San Diego, and just now learning to live with him, and he's learning to live with us. And he had a very foul mouth. And so, like I said at the other show, that the F word, was like the in our house. And so no one really saw anything wrong with it. That's just how he talked, and that's how we were going to start talking. But he did like to drink. And
another drinker.
Yes, but only on Friday nights. So he would never drink any other day, but Friday nights.
And was that payday for him?
I don't know necessarily, but, being a contractor, he'd go out with his subs and stuff. Probably It was like, something to celebrate their week. Mm-hmm. And he loved boats, fishing boats. And so that was one thing that him and I became very close with, is that I became his deckhand. But anyway, so he would drink every Friday night, but he would also invite us to drink with him. I'm like 10 now, right? And if you want to smoke, you can do that too. But it has to be at the table. And so I know...
At 10 years old?
Yeah, and my sisters were, 13 and 14. And so so we would do this whole thing every Friday night. And, you don't know if this is right or wrong. What do you know? This is the first time you're 10. Does every family do this?
But was your mom seeing it?
My mom saw it, yeah. But again, we had no other choice.
So she knew that it was wrong.
Yeah, but we had no other choice, Connie. What did we have? Mm-hmm. We had nothing. My mom worked all those jobs, and and thank God now we get down to San Diego, and she decides to get a real estate license, and then everything changed for her at that point. And so, so unfortunately, my dad would drive drunk a lot.
With you in the car?
With us in the car. Mm. And my biological, my real father would do that too. And so, oh my gosh, that's when I started getting a fear of other people driving me. I had like this phobia.
Do you drive now? When Butch is in the car, you're the driver, right?
Well, we switch off.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, we switch off. But it gripped me for a long time because, we would drive like my real father, because he was a gambler, remember? So we would drive to Vegas all the time. Well, we would drive and he'd be wasted. weaving all over. And of course he smoked in this, the air conditioning would be on, but the windows would be up. You'd want to die in the car. So anyway, my dad would, drive us drunk, and there were times where I was like, and we had a camper, we'd go camping, and he'd be drunk as we're driving. I'd be looking at the, over the edges of the cliff and going, we're going to die, we're going to die. And so because of that, I mean, literally, like, fear came in and just really messed with me with that. So when we fast forward in life, I was really afraid to have people drive me anywhere.
Julieann, what is your relationship with your sisters? Now, during that time.
During that time?
Were you leaning on them? You're the youngest, and
Yeah.
you were scared. Were they comforting to you? Were they?
Well, we were all trying to figure it out.
Were they also scared?
They were very scared too, and so we were always a close family. Like, at least the four of us girls were. Like, we were a very close family, and but it's like all of a sudden now the girls start getting a little older. They start doing things they maybe shouldn't be doing, and I'm sitting there just watching and starting to do what they want to do. And that means, partying,
You're being
having
exposed
boys
to
over,
a
which
lot.
that's why I'm so passionate about this with anybody. I was not ready to see some of the things that I saw. There's a
And it's stuff you can never erase.
No.
You expose yourself to certain things that will never get erased. The vision, the verbal, and that's why I believe we need to guard our hearts and guard the hearts of our children for
Absolutely.
exactly what you're saying.
And my mom was working all the time, and so we were kind of raising ourselves at this point.
She had no choice.
She had no choice. She was a realtor, so realtors' hours are all over the place. Then it came down to she couldn't even make dinner anymore. We'd have to make dinner for my dad, which was nothing because he was like, "Oh, just open up a can of beans." I mean, he was very easy.
This is your stepdad.
My stepdad. So he was very easy to live with. But that's when all of a sudden now things start happening where we start smoking cigarettes and hiding them. And since my dad smoked in the house, he couldn't tell if we just smoked a cigarette. And so we were smoking and having parties in the house, having boys in the house. And my dad, because he's a contractor, so back then they had the CB, radios. So he had that big antenna. So we could see it, the fence line was here. We could see that antenna if he was coming. So we'd get all the boys out of the house, so that my dad would come around the back. And it was just like this, funny. We'd say like, hey, meet us in the park, after. But it kind of got loose as far as like supervision. And so, and again, my sisters were older and I just followed along like, everybody else. And so like I said, there are things that you probably shouldn't see, but that's when I started, seeing some things I should not have seen. And so then it was okay for me to do it too. Mm-hmm. And so my first sexual experience, I was 13 years old.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And that's just what you do, and
Now, at this point, in this new marriage and this new home in San Diego, is there any church going?
Oh, no. Again, Jesus Christ is still a cuss word.
Okay.
Do you know what's interesting? Not one person ever said, hey, do you want to go to church? Like, I didn't have a friend that was that annoying friend that'd be like, come to church with us. Like, no, never. It wasn't until I was literally like in my 20s, late 20s, where I met someone that asked me to go to church. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
No one ever asked me to go to church. I probably would have gone because, I always had this like emotional roller coaster all the time. Depressed, happy, depressed, sad, just all these things. So I would have been someone that...
Well, there were reasons for your
Yes.
depression, your sadness, and your being lost, and for you attaching to things like smoking and experiences that you should not have.
Yeah.
But there's reason there for it. Imagining that you are still working out all of that damage.
No, because you know what? Well, we'll get to that in another episode. But man, what I learned after I got sick is I gave it all to the Lord.
And are we going to talk about eventually how that sickness stemmed
yes.
from a lot of these experiences?
See, that's key.
Yeah.
That's exactly, that's why I am on a mission to help people just completely get rid of this trauma.
And get rid of it by understanding the forgiveness
Yes.
that we have through Jesus Christ, that
Yeah.
we have that forgiveness so we don't have to carry the burden of our past. and there's no condemnation in Jesus.
No.
And that has been the biggest gift for me. So that is a big part of your message. But okay, so here we are. We're in San Diego. You are now how old?
Like 13 years old,
13.
14, 15. And
You're in
you know,
high school.
I'm in high school. And, you know, I was the mean one. I was the bully. I was the one that most parents didn't want their kids to hang out with because I would try to get, you know, all the girls and my friends to
Do what you were doing.
do what I was doing, exactly. And I had some other friends that were doing worse than what I was doing. So it all just kind of, you know, worked together. And so, you know, those are the, you know, it was funny because my daughter, Carly, does a pageant called Pageant 360. And so it's about inner beauty. And it's really for girls that have had like traumatic experiences that now become very shy and, you know, just introverted and because of like bullying and stuff. And so one time
So were you a bully?
I was a bully. So one time Carly had me speak because no one ever hears from the bully. They always hear from the ones that are bullied.
Sure.
And so I got up there and I spoke and you should have seen
As a
the look.
recovered bully.
Yes, but you should have seen the look on these girls' faces. Like, I hate you, but I like you because you're Carly's mom and I knew you before that. But why would you do something like that? So I would explain to them, like,
Well,
you know,
if they hear this story, they can understand
Exactly.
why. Not an excuse, but they can understand why.
and hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
And that's what we
Exactly.
do. And I would bully girls into
And you're stopping the cycle.
Yeah. I would bully girls into doing what I did. And if they didn't, you know, I would harass them until they did it. And they would. So I was responsible for a lot of girls to get into drugs, get into, you know, smoking cigarettes, you know, being promiscuous and all that stuff.
Okay, so how long did your mom stay married to Bill?
Well, she stayed married to him till I graduated high school, actually. She wanted to do that so that she had a place for me. But what was
Why? Did she know she had to
she
leave
knew.
this man?
They already had like separated. They just
Oh,
didn't
okay.
really talk about it. They had nothing in common anymore, and they just grew apart. And so
And where is he today?
he actually is dead too.
Okay.
But he
Okay,
went
I
to
gotta
go,
keep a list.
Yeah, he went to go be with Jesus, though. We know
he
that
did?
about
Oh,
him.
that's good.
Yes. So
That's
he definitely did. But he just, you know, my mom went this way, he went that way, and there was nothing anymore in between them. And I think that they both knew he was there for a time and a season. And when that was up, but my mom, I'll never forget, like about 6 months before I graduated, she was like, okay, so you know that when you graduate, you're out because we're selling this house.
Oh.
And we had, you know, we had to start a whole new life.
And did she marry again after Bill?
She did.
I told you I'm keeping a scorecard for Jennifer.
Yes, but that was a big mistake because she let a man control her, meaning in a way of he didn't want her to really have anything to do with her daughters. So we couldn't be a part of her life watching to see what
The third
he
husband.
was doing. Yeah, and he was literally taking her for all her money. Her paychecks would go right into his account. He didn't allow her to have one. And then he took her for like $300,000. This is back in the 80s, like 1983, I think. So that was a lot of money back then.
And how long
so-
did she stay married to him?
Not very long.
Not very long.
No.
And you did not have to live with him.
No, I didn't. I wouldn't have because I would come over just to borrow an outfit, you know, we do with our moms. And he would say, she's not allowed in here anymore. None of your kids can borrow your clothes. That's your clothes. You know, that kind of thing. And, you know, it's like my mom was like, well, let me just tell you, my kids come first, you don't. And so that didn't last very long.
And he obviously didn't have any children of his own
He didn't.
before that.
No.
And did Bill?
Well, okay, so what's funny is that so we have my dad's funeral, and it turns out my dad had like 6 kids. And he had been
Which
married.
dad?
My stepdad.
Your stepdad, Bill.
And he had been married about 8 times.
And
My mom
never
was
knew?
we didn't know. My mom was his 7th or 8th wife. So, I mean, it makes sense now.
Oh my gosh.
How he would, I guess, be with someone long enough, they'd get pregnant, he'd leave. So he never raised a kid.
Wow.
So we're at the funeral, we're like, well, who are you? Well, who are you? And we're like, well, we're his daughters.
No?
Really?
We're his daughters.
Yeah. But obviously, we weren't his blood daughters. But yeah, so that was very weird. But again, like how the enemy just kind of set me up and set us all up for so much, you know, insecurity and fear.
Insecurity and fear.
Yeah. And that doesn't go away. I don't know, honestly, without Jesus, I don't know how that gets eradicated out of someone's life. I really don't.
So your walk with Jesus is what took that fear away from you. But what are you scared of now? What brings on fear for Julieann now?
Nothing. Honestly, you know why? I'm at a place now in my life. I mean, yeah, if you're driving and someone cuts you off, you get that jolt. But I'm at a place in my life right now that I know that he is taking care of all of it. I don't have to, as moms, you've got 2 kids. You've got lots of grandchildren. We can get into fear about our kids very easily, and your grandchildren.
Yes.
But I know that I have placed, or my husband and I have placed our kids in the arms of Jesus, and it's not my problem. I can help them, figure little things out or whatever. But as far as the big stuff goes, and that's what I hope that I have, what my husband and I have spoken to our kids, like, our daughter Sophia, she'll just go spend time with the Lord. She's got a problem. We won't even maybe know about it. But she has a relationship with him where she knows that it's got to be settled with him first. Because mom might give mom's opinion.
Right.
Because I'm a mom.
And that's mom's opinion. So let's move on.
And that's mom's opinion.
Okay, so we are now you're a teenager.
Yes.
And when do you go out on your own?
Well, so I'm not even 18 yet because I graduate high school and I'm literally, my mom's like, gotta move. Okay. And so we're out. And I remember I was walking through a park once and I really had nowhere to go. But I knew I could stay at my sister's.
And where was she?
Well, they all lived in San Diego now. So we all lived there. And unfortunately,
Were they married?
Well, they both were. And so my older sister was married to a heroin addict.
So we're repeating mistakes.
Yes. And she met him at a DUI class. That's like, hello, that should have been your first clue. But anyway.
Well, there weren't dating apps then, right?
No, not at all. And so I had her, but he was too volatile. He was crazy. And then, but I also had my middle sister. And unfortunately, she was also married to an ex-heroin addict who became...
Where'd they be? No.
Yeah, I know. On the beach.
Okay.
On the beach. And they both had kids. And so, I remember one time walking through the park because I didn't know what to do. I knew I wanted to be an actress, okay? That's all I wanted to do. But that meant I had to come back to LA, and I don't know anybody here except for my father. Well, I can't go, he's crazy, right? Because I didn't know, I never saw him. I didn't know where he went and how things ended up for him or anything. So I had nowhere to go. And I remember walking to this park, and it was dreary in San Diego. And I just was like, and again, we don't know Jesus. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And I'm speaking this out loud. I don't know where to go. And the song from Toto comes on. In my car, I test the rains in Africa. And I'm thinking, Africa, where do I go? Do I go somewhere? How would I even get there? I don't know where to go. What do I do? So I end up at my sister's house, Lisa, who was so sweet and so kind to let me come in there and just try to figure it out. What am I going to do? So my mom at the same time was trying to figure out her situation as well. And my aunt...
But your mom is still in San Diego after leaving Bill.
Yes.
And when you say you're going to come up to LA and the only one you knew was your dad, and I love how you speak about Bill as your dad.
Yes, I'm sorry. So I'll say my father.
So your biological father is who you meant.
Yeah,
okay.
You're
okay,
right. Thank you for doing that. And so I do know that we knew that my father had gotten married again. So we knew that.
Oh, and he was in LA.
Yeah, but he was in LA. So I'm just floundering. And someone had said, you should go to college. And I'm like, well, I hated high school. I was the worst. They gave me a courtesy diploma because honestly, I was the worst student ever. I ditched all the time. I got all my friends to ditch. I mean, like I said, I was the one that,
a bad influence.
I was a bad influence on everyone. And
well, you're a good influence on me.
I am now. Yes. God turned it around like he always does. And so, school was just not for me. And I'm like, besides, I want to be an actress. Who needs to go to school, right? Mm. And so there's that studio audience over there. So my mom said, you should probably go to college. I'm like, Oh, God. So I literally went for a week and went, no, this isn't for me. I knew it wasn't. So I knew that wasn't going to be my job. And so meanwhile, my mom asked me if I wanted to move into my aunt's condo in Coronado at the shores. So now we're living, hey, I have no money, no job or anything, but I'm living at the shores on the 13th floor. No, they didn't have 13 because it was bad luck. It was the 14th floor. And overlooking the ocean and the city, and still no clue. But I did get involved with a boy, unfortunately, when I told you my stepdad was a guy that loved boats.
Yes.
And so I would go down to not Marina Del Rey. I would go down to Shelter Island, which is where we had our boats. Well, I met a boy on a boat, and it was kind of like one of those love at first sights kind of thing. And unfortunately, he went on to rob a bank.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
So
did he get caught?
Yes.
So it was hard to date him while he was in prison?
Well, okay, you're going to laugh at this, but we would talk on the phone
While he was in prison?
because in Coronado at the towers, I could see the prison. You know what I'm talking about in San Diego? That
I
brown
actually
building?
don't know what you're talking about. I'm happy to say I do not know what she's talking about.
Well, in San Diego, there's this one brown building with the small windows.
Okay.
That's a high rise. And so we'd be talking on the phone. And I knew he was in that prison because they were holding him there until they sentenced him. They ended up sentencing him to, I think it was somewhere in Arizona or something.
Tell me you didn't follow him to Arizona.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
But the worst part of it was this. You guys, I told him to do it,
To do what?
to rob the bank.
Oh, Julieann.
So again, now I actually have to go back. So before I went to the shores, to the Coronado shores, I got in with the wrong people. And I ended up going down and living in Hawthorne with a bunch of motorcyclists.
And we have no pictures of any of this.
Nothing, I know. I go down there and I'm living with these motorcyclists and drug dealers. Well, I didn't actually know they were drug dealers, but I found out when the police came and raided one night and I'm like, who are you? And they were ripping us out of bed, going through all of our stuff. Now, I did not have drugs on me. I was not a drug addict at all. I drank and I smoked cigarettes, but I did not do drugs. And so now this is before the shores. So this is like this little bit of time that was bad. And so there was on the corner of the street that I lived on in this house, I guess like a crack house, there was a phone booth. And I would go there and I would call my boyfriend, Greg. And he came from a very affluent family from La Jolla. And so he knew, the bank that he would go to and make deposits and withdrawals. And one day he calls me and he goes, why can't we be together? And I'm like, well, I'm not going back to San Diego, so you got to come here. And he said, well, I don't have any money if I leave, because he was a deckhand on boats, and sometimes he would captain the boats. He said, if I leave, I have no money. I said, fine, then just rob a bank, but I'm not going back there. You're going to have to come to me. So the next day...
Wait a minute, is that all you said
that's
when you
all I
said you
said.
told him to rob the bank? You just said that. Okay.
But he
that's
really-
a little different than
Yes, but he
what
did
you
take
led
me
me to believe.
seriously.
Yeah, but that's not.
I mean,
your
I did not
That's
say,
not your responsibility.
"Hey, rob the bank,
Yeah,
we
and
need-"
this
no.
is how you do it. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
When
but
he was in court, he didn't tell them. Julieann told me.
he actually did.
We're going to have to silence the studio audience.
His parents tried to just destroy me because their little boy could never have done something
It was
like
all
that
your fault.
unless Julianne Davis or Cabral or whatever. Yeah, Davis at the time. Yeah, because I had to go back to Davis because, like I said, when we got our driver's license, I had to go back to my original name. But yeah, so his mother tried to pull me through the whole thing, but it didn't hold up because I wasn't. It was just a suggestion, like it was like
Yeah,
off the cuff.
if it was like that, off the cuff.
And I'll never forget. I called. I was trying to call him. One morning, I get up and I go to that phone booth. Well, there had been a shooting taking place that night, and the whole phone booth was shot up. Glass was everywhere, and all that was left was a pole and a phone. So I put my quarter.
Nothing stopped you. You put your quarters in.
I put my dime at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And I called, and I can't get Greg. Now remember, there was no cell phones.
Not right.
Then I call his best friend, our best friend, and I'm like, hey, where is he? He goes, you don't know? And I said, no. He said, well, he's got arrested. And that's how I found out.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was bad. And so now I'm now just like diving deep down into like, I don't even care about my life. Who cares? I'm just going to be a waitress, at this little diner down the street. And
does your mom know any of this?
she doesn't, but my sister does. And so what happened was they literally found out where I was and they got a U-Haul truck because I brought all furniture and everything. They literally came up with a U-Haul truck, got me out of bed and said, you're leaving now.
Good.
Ripped me out of that bed. Took my dresser in my bed and put it, threw the guy out that was in the bed with me, and put all my stuff in a truck, and away we went back down to San Diego. So here we are now. Now I'm at the shores. Greg gets arrested, and that's how we're talking. So, yeah.
From prison and from your wonderful perch in by the beach. That's okay. So then, does he get out?
Yeah, well, he did get out, and I met up with him years later.
But
because he spent 4 years.
Oh, so you broke up with him?
Oh yeah,
you
we
went
did.
on with your life.
That was one time I listened to my mom when she said, "You need to," because she said to me, she goes, "Do you realize this will follow him the rest of his life?" He robbed a bank, which actually he never had a gun. He just told and the teller knew him, and he goes, "Give me all the money," and she goes, "Greg, what are you talking about?" Like she knew his name.
Oh my God.
And the whole family bank there, and he goes, I have a gun in this bag. You have to give me all that money. And so he got like 4 years, I think. But my mom.
So you listened to your mom who said.
Because she said, this will follow him. It's a federal offense. It'll follow him the rest of his life. Do you realize what your life is going to be? And I said, okay. So I decided that I was going to pursue the acting now.
Okay.
And I wasn't going to let anything stop me. And
So you're in San Diego, but you have to go back to LA to pursue your acting.
So
right?
that's where, oh my gosh, it's so crazy. So an old friend from high school contacts me and says, I'm in Missouri. I'd love to move back to LA. What are you doing? Now he was just a friend, yeah. And so I said, funny you should ask. I said I could really use a roommate. So we moved out together. We were very close friendship-wise. There was nothing between us. And so we were friends, and he just took care of me.
In LA?
No, this is in San Diego till we could afford to move to LA.
Until you could afford
because we didn't have any money, and we both had to get a job in order to make money. But we both loved to smoke, so we were kind of always going back and forth. Do we pay the rent, or we buy our carton of cigarettes? One of the two. So we would eat top ramen for dinner every night. We'd have it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. He would make it in all kinds of different ways.
And different flavors.
And different flavors, of course. We'd buy like that big, case of like for $10. And so then we finally did move up to LA together because he also wanted to get into the business, and that's when we, planted there.
Okay.
And I actually contacted my real father.
When you were in LA?
When I was back in LA.
Okay, I want to hear about this, but I want to hear about this in the next episode.
Okay.
Because we are just touching the surface.
I know.
Of the whole complete history of the woman who's
crazy.
My mouth is probably open for most of this as I'm listening to her, and I didn't know any of this, so it is.
I don't really, and it's so funny, it's like I feel like I'm telling you the story about a girl I used to know.
Right, it must feel that way.
Yeah,
it must feel
does.
that way. An outer body experience talking about yourself. But again, who has the rights to the movie? Okay.
I do, I guess.
Well, we have a lot more that we are going to be talking to Julieann about. I want to thank you for being with us. And is there something you want to say about the website and where people can...
Oh, please, you guys. We are so thankful that you are with us every single, day for Healing Journeys Today and every week for the journey. And so you all are helping us literally make this happen. And so if you want to help us out, you can go to healingjourneystoday.com and the donate button is there if you want to, feel led that you wanted to help continue these journeys and to continue all the things that we do. And I just want to thank you so much, because it is because of you that we're doing all of this, that everybody, donates, volunteers their time every single day, 7 days a week, to bring you teachings and stories to help you get out of your situation, to show you Jesus for real.
And we are going to be back with part 3 of Julieann's story. And it looks a little different than the normal journey that you watch. We are on the set, our set, my family set. This is where we have shot many episodes of Intelligence for Your Life videos. And all of it can be found on thewarriormindset.com. So
see, if this show would have been out when I was 18, Intelligence for Your Life, things could have been a lot different. So please go and watch the show.
Again, thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next time on The
guys.
Journey.